I'm Amelia Parker, 28, and until last month, I thought the emerald engagement ring from my fiancé Nathan was the most beautiful symbol of our love. Not because it was flashy, it wasn't, but because of what it represented. Then my sister Jessica called it fake at our family dinner, setting off a chain reaction that would end with her facing Nathan's legal team. The look on her face that day was something I'll never forget. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I share how my jealous sister's worst impulses led to her most humiliating moment, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to follow my journey from heartbreak to vindication. I grew up in a typical middle-class family in suburban Boston. My parents weren't wealthy, but they emphasized the importance of education and hard work. My father worked as a high school math teacher, and my mother was a nurse at the local hospital. They scraped together enough to ensure my sister Jessica and I had everything we needed, though luxury items were rare in our household. From an early age, I learned the value of working for what I wanted. When I was accepted to Boston University on a partial scholarship, I still had to work 2 part-time jobs to cover the remaining tuition and expenses. I'd spend mornings at a coffee shop near campus, afternoons in classes, and evenings shelving books at the university library. Weekends were divided between studying and picking up extra shifts wherever I could. It was exhausting, but I graduated with minimal debt and a sense of self-reliance that would serve me well. Jessica, 2 years younger than me, took a different approach to life. While I embraced our parents' pragmatic values, she seemed determined to escape what she called our boring middle-class existence. She'd spend hours flipping through fashion magazines, creating vision boards of luxury lifestyles, and talking about the wealthy husband she would eventually find. Where I saw value in earning my way, Jessica saw shortcuts through strategic relationships. "Why work so hard when you could just marry someone who already has money?" she'd ask me. I never had a good answer that satisfied her. After college, I landed an entry-level position at Horizon Technologies, a growing software company. The pay wasn't impressive, but I saw potential for growth. I arrived early, stayed late, and volunteered for projects nobody else wanted. Within 3 years, I'd been promoted twice and was leading my own team. By 27, I'd become one of the youngest executives in the company's history, overseeing product development with a team of 30 people reporting to me. Jessica, meanwhile, had dropped out of college to pursue what she called opportunities in Los Angeles. From what I gathered through her Instagram posts and occasional calls home, these opportunities mainly involved attending industry parties, dating minor celebrities, and working odd jobs that put her adjacent to wealth and influence. She'd call me with stories about the mansions she'd visited or the hedge fund manager who'd bought her dinner, always with an undercurrent of "my life is more exciting than yours." My dating life during those years was a series of disappointments. I met plenty of men who initially seemed interested, only to disappear when they realized I wouldn't dim my ambition to suit their egos. One boyfriend actually told me, "It's intimidating dating someone who makes more money than I do." We broke up the next day. I had almost resigned myself to focusing solely on my career when I met Nathan at the annual Tech Innovation Summit in San Francisco. I was representing Horizon on a panel about ethical AI development, and he asked the most insightful question during the Q&A. Afterward, he approached me to continue the conversation, and we ended up talking for hours at the hotel bar. Nathan introduced himself as the founder of a software security company. He was intelligent, thoughtful, and refreshingly humble. When he asked for my number, I gave it without hesitation. He called the next day to invite me to dinner. Our first date was at a casual neighborhood restaurant, nice, but not extravagant. He picked me up in a modest BMW, not the flashy sports car I'd come to expect from successful men in tech. Throughout dinner, he asked questions about my work, my ideas, my goals, and actually listened to my answers. He spoke passionately about his own projects, but never in a way that felt like bragging. For our second date, we visited a small art gallery featuring local artists, followed by coffee at a hole-in-the-wall cafe he loved. For our third, we hiked a trail overlooking the city and had a picnic with food he'd prepared himself. Each time we met, I found myself more drawn to his genuine nature and the way he seemed completely comfortable in his own skin. We'd been dating for nearly 2 months when I came across his name in Forbes magazine. I was flipping through it in a waiting room when I saw a feature on Tech's 40 Under 40. And there was Nathan, listed as the founder and CEO of Sentinel Security Systems, a company valued at over $3 billion. The article mentioned his revolutionary approach to cybersecurity that had earned him contracts with major governments and Fortune 500 companies worldwide. That night at dinner, I placed the magazine on the table. "So, were you planning to mention this?" Nathan looked genuinely embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I should have been more forthcoming." "Why weren't you?" I asked, confused rather than angry. He sighed. "When people know about my wealth up front, it changes things. They either want something from me or they treat me differently. My last 3 relationships were with women who seemed more interested in my bank account than me as a person." He reached for my hand. "With you, I wanted to be just Nathan. Not Nathan the billionaire. Not Nathan the CEO. Just the guy who was blown away by your brilliant mind at that conference." His explanation made sense, and I appreciated his desire for authenticity. From that point on, our relationship deepened. We discovered shared values, a commitment to education, a desire to use technology for positive social impact, and a belief that wealth carried responsibility. We debated ethics, shared books that had shaped our thinking, and challenged each other intellectually in ways I'd never experienced with previous partners. Nathan gradually introduced me to more aspects of his life: his sprawling but tasteful home in the hills, his foundation that funded technology education for underprivileged children, his small circle of trusted friends. I introduced him to my parents, who were initially starstruck but quickly came to appreciate him for his kindness and the obvious care he showed me. The only person I hadn't introduced him to was Jessica. Somehow, I knew that meeting would be complicated. Jessica had always measured her self-worth against mine, and the thought of telling her I was dating someone like Nathan filled me with a strange anxiety. But as our relationship grew more serious, I knew that introduction was inevitable. After 8 months together, Nathan began dropping hints about our future. He asked questions about where I saw myself in 5 years, what kind of home I'd want to live in, whether I'd consider relocating if the right opportunity came along. I sensed something significant was on the horizon, but I tried not to get ahead of myself. The proposal came on the anniversary of our first meeting. Nathan suggested we attend the same tech conference where we'd met, claiming he wanted to support a colleague who was speaking. I agreed, thinking nothing of it. During a break between sessions, he guided me to the now empty conference room where we'd first encountered each other. I was confused until I saw the transformation. The room had been decorated with subtle string lights, and where the panel table had been stood a small round table set for 2, with the same wine we'd shared on our first date. "What is this?" I asked, though my racing heart already knew. "This is where my life changed," Nathan said, taking my hands. "Right here, when you challenged that speaker about privacy concerns and then offered that brilliant alternative approach. I knew then that you were exceptional." He led me to the table and we sat down. As we sipped the wine, he shared memories from our months together, specific conversations we'd had, challenges we'd overcome, moments when he'd realized the depth of his feelings for me. Then he reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box. My breath caught. "Amelia, I've known successful people who are empty inside, and I've known people of modest means who are rich in everything that matters. You've shown me that true partnership isn't about what someone can give you, but who they inspire you to become." He opened the box, revealing a ring that surprised me. Rather than the massive diamond I might have expected from someone of his wealth, the ring featured a vintage emerald setting. The stone was modest in size, but had an unusual depth of color, set in what appeared to be antique gold with tiny accent diamonds. "This was my grandmother's," he explained, his voice soft with emotion. "She wore it through World War II, through losing everything and rebuilding her life. My grandfather sold his family's farm to buy it for her in 1939, just before they fled Austria. She had to hide it many times, once by sewing it into the hem of her coat. To me, it represents resilience, hope, and the kind of love that endures through the darkest times. He looked into my eyes. Will you marry me, Amelia? Tears filled my eyes as I nodded. Yes, I whispered, then more confidently yes. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, he added, the emerald is extremely rare, from a mine that no longer exists. A jeweler once told my family it's among the finest examples of its kind. But its real value is in its history and what it represents. I couldn't stop looking at it, not because of its monetary worth, but because of the story it carried. This wasn't a ring purchased to impress or make a statement of wealth. It was a deeply personal heirloom that represented family, survival, and values that aligned with my own. We celebrated that night with a private dinner at his home, talking for hours about our vision for our shared future. We decided to tell our families right away, though I felt that familiar pang of anxiety when thinking about Jessica's reaction. My parents were overjoyed when we called them with the news. My mother cried happy tears, and my father, usually so reserved, told Nathan he couldn't have wished for a better partner for his daughter. They immediately invited us for dinner the following weekend. Should we invite Jessica? My mother asked tentatively, aware of the complicated dynamics between us. Of course, I said, wanting to include my only sibling in this important moment. I'll call her myself. Jessica answered on the fourth ring. Hey sis, what's up? I'm actually at this amazing rooftop party in Hollywood right now. You wouldn't believe who's here. I took a deep breath. I have some news, Jess. I'm engaged. There was a pause. Engaged? To that tech guy you've been seeing? Wow, that was fast. Her tone was difficult to read. His name is Nathan, and yes, we're really happy. Well, congrats. You'll have to tell me all about it. And I have news too, I'm dating Bradley Wilson. Yes, that Bradley Wilson, the real estate developer. He's absolutely loaded. Of course, Jessica had found a way to compete with my news. That's great, Jess. Mom and Dad are hosting a dinner for us this weekend. Can you come? I'd really like you to meet Nathan. Let me check if Bradley and I can make it. We have this charity gala, but maybe we can stop by before. After some negotiation, Jessica agreed to come to dinner. As the day approached, I found myself increasingly nervous. The ring on my finger, which had felt so meaningful and perfect when Nathan gave it to me, suddenly seemed understated when I imagined Jessica's scrutiny. I caught myself wondering if she would see its value or dismiss it as inadequate, and then felt guilty for even caring what she might think. Are you okay? Nathan asked the night before the dinner, noticing my distraction. Just nervous about tomorrow. Jessica can be judgmental. He smiled reassuringly. She's your sister. I'm sure we'll find common ground. I wished I shared his optimism. My mother had gone all out for the dinner, using her best china and preparing Nathan's favorite salmon dish that I'd mentioned to her. My father had cleaned the house meticulously and seemed unusually invested in the wine selection. Their efforts to impress Nathan touched me, especially since he was the last person to judge anyone based on such things. Nathan and I arrived early to help with preparations. He immediately charmed my parents by rolling up his sleeves to help in the kitchen and engaging my father in a detailed conversation about his latest woodworking project. Watching him fit so seamlessly into my family filled me with contentment. That feeling evaporated the moment Jessica's BMW SUV pulled into the driveway, followed by a gleaming Porsche. She emerged from the passenger side of the Porsche wearing what appeared to be a brand new designer dress, her neck and wrists adorned with obviously expensive jewelry. The man who stepped out of the driver's side was tall, tanned, and looked exactly like the type of wealthy show-off Jessica had always been attracted to. Family. Jessica called out as she entered without knocking. Sorry, we're a tiny bit late. Bradley had a quick call with his investors in Dubai. She air-kissed my mother's cheeks, hugged my father briefly, then turned to Nathan with an appraising look. So this is the man who swept my big sister off her feet. I'm Jessica, the fun sister. She extended her hand with a laugh that sounded rehearsed. Nathan shook her hand warmly. I've heard so much about you. It's great to finally meet. And this is Bradley, Jessica said, pulling her date forward. Bradley Wilson of Wilson Development Group. Bradley nodded at everyone with practiced charm. Pleasure. Beautiful home you have here. His tone suggested he was used to complimenting more impressive properties, but my parents either didn't notice or chose to ignore it. The first part of dinner went surprisingly well. Jessica was on her best behavior, asking Nathan questions about his work and appearing to listen to his answers. Bradley spoke at length about his latest luxury development in Miami, pausing occasionally to check his phone. My parents maintained a steady flow of conversation, clearly trying to keep things pleasant. As my mother served dessert, she smiled at me. "Amelia, why don't you and Nathan share your news properly now that we're all together?" Nathan took my hand, his thumb brushing over the ring. "I've asked Amelia to marry me, and I'm the luckiest man alive because she said yes." My father raised his glass. "To Amelia and Nathan. We couldn't be happier. Let's see the ring," Jessica exclaimed, reaching for my hand before I could extend it. I watched her face as she examined the emerald. Her expression shifted from anticipation to confusion to something that looked like disappointment. "Oh," she said finally. "It's unique. Very vintage." It was Nathan's grandmother's, I explained, hearing the defensive note in my voice. "It has an amazing history." "How special," Jessica said in a tone that suggested the opposite. She turned to Bradley. "Honey, remember that ring we saw at Cartier last week? The one with the 5-carat diamond?" Bradley nodded absently, his attention on his phone. "Nathan's grandmother wore this through World War II," I continued, wanting everyone to understand its significance. "It's incredibly meaningful to his family." "Of course, sentimental value is so important," Jessica said with a tight smile. "It's nice when a man gives you something from his heart rather than his wallet." The implication was clear, that Nathan had chosen not to spend money on my ring. The conversation moved on, but I noticed Jessica continuing to glance at my ring throughout dessert, each look making me more uncomfortable. After we finished eating, she pulled me into the kitchen under the pretense of helping with the dishes. "So," she whispered once we were alone, "is that really the best he could do? I mean, isn't he supposed to be worth billions? That emerald can't be more than a carat." "The size doesn't matter to me," I said, feeling my cheeks flush. "It's the meaning behind it." "But is it even real? I mean, emeralds that small usually aren't worth the setting they're in." "Of course it's real," I hissed. "Nathan wouldn't give me a fake ring." Jessica raised her eyebrows. "I'm just saying, for a billionaire, it's a little underwhelming. Maybe he's not as wealthy as he claims. Or maybe he's just cheap. Men with real money want to show it off, Amelia. Trust me, I know the type." "You don't know anything about Nathan," I said, my hands trembling as I placed a dish in the sink. "Oh, honey," Jessica laughed, patting my arm condescendingly. "I'm just looking out for you. I'd hate to see you marrying a guy who talks a big game but can't even spring for a decent ring." Before I could respond, Jessica walked back into the dining room. I followed, trying to compose myself, only to hear her announcing loudly, "I was just telling Amelia she should get that ring appraised. It's so unusual, and you know how many fakes are out there these days." The room fell silent. My mother looked mortified, my father confused, and Bradley suddenly interested in the conversation for the first time all evening. Nathan, who had been in mid-conversation with my father, turned slowly to look at Jessica. "I'm sorry, what about the ring?" he asked quietly. Jessica, either oblivious to or enjoying the tension she created, continued, "I'm just saying, emeralds that color are usually treated or synthetic. A real one that size would be worth a fortune, so it's probably not genuine. No offense intended. It's still a lovely design." I felt hot tears of embarrassment threatening to spill. Not because I believed her assessment, I didn't. But because of the deliberate cruelty of her trying to diminish something so special to Nathan and me. Nathan placed his napkin on the table and stood up. "The ring," he said in a measured voice, "is a cashmere emerald from the 1930s. The mine it came from closed in 1934 and produced some of the most valuable emeralds in the world. My grandfather purchased it from a jeweler in Vienna who specialized in rare gemstones." Jessica's smile faltered slightly. "Well, it's just that it looks so simple." The most valuable things often don't announce themselves, Nathan replied evenly. My grandmother believed in quiet elegance rather than ostentatious display. It's one of many values she passed down that I admire. I could see Jessica calculating how to respond, but my mother quickly interjected, "Who would like coffee with dessert?" Her desperate attempt to change the subject only highlighted the uncomfortable atmosphere. The rest of the evening passed in strained conversation. Jessica made several more subtle digs about the ring and Nathan's supposed wealth, each one causing me to sink further into humiliation. When they finally left, I felt physically exhausted from the tension. "I'm so sorry," I told Nathan in the car ride home. "Jessica has always been competitive with me, but this was a new low." Nathan took my hand. "You have nothing to apologize for. I'm sorry she made you uncomfortable about something that should bring you joy." He kissed my fingers just above the ring. "What matters is what it means to us." I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Jessica's behavior would only escalate from here. The morning after the disastrous dinner, I woke up to a text from Jessica, "Had such a great time meeting Nathan. FYI, sent you an email with some info on Emerald authentication. Just want you to be protected." Hugs and kisses. When I checked my email, I found links to articles with titles like "How to Spot Fake Emeralds" and "Why Men Give Fake Gemstones." I deleted the email without responding. Nathan was remarkably unbothered by the whole situation. "People like your sister measure worth in very specific, material ways," he said. "It doesn't affect who we are or what we have." I tried to adopt his perspective, but Jessica wasn't making it easy. Within days, she'd posted several not-so-subtle Instagram stories featuring close-ups of her own jewelry collection with captions like, "Real recognizes real," and "When he loves you enough to get the best." She never mentioned me directly, but the timing made her target clear. Then came the group text to our extended family, announcing Bradley had taken her shopping at Tiffany's for a just because gift, a diamond bracelet she made sure to photograph next to a champagne glass. My cousin Megan called me immediately. "What's going on with Jessica?" She called me yesterday asking if I'd seen your engagement ring, and then went on this weird rant about how some men try to fool women with fake stones. "She's convinced Nathan is either lying about his wealth or too cheap to buy me a proper ring," I explained, the words leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. "That's ridiculous," Megan said. "Anyone who's spent 5 minutes with Nathan can tell he adores you. And isn't that ring a family heirloom?" "Yes, but Jessica seems to think that's just an excuse." Similar conversations played out with other family members and friends as Jessica's whisper campaign spread. Most people dismissed her insinuations, but the constant need to explain and defend was wearing me down. 2 weeks after the dinner, my mother called, her voice hesitant. "Honey, is everything okay with you and Nathan?" Jessica mentioned something about his company having financial problems. "What?" "No, his company is doing extremely well." "Where would she get that idea?" "I don't know. She said something about him not being listed on some recent wealthy people ranking that he was on before." "I'm sure it's nothing." I felt a surge of anger. Jessica was now fabricating stories to support her narrative that Nathan wasn't really wealthy. That evening, I discovered just how far the rumors had spread when Nathan came home looking troubled. "Is something wrong?" I asked. He hesitated before answering. "I had a strange conversation with a potential investor today. He asked if the rumors about Sentinel having liquidity issues were true." My stomach dropped. "That's not possible." That's what I said. When I pressed him on where he'd heard this, he mentioned he was at a dinner party where a woman dating a real estate developer named Bradley had been discussing it. The realization that Jessica's petty jealousy was now potentially affecting Nathan's business relationships pushed me from hurt to furious. "I'll talk to her," I promised. "This has to stop." But my calls to Jessica went straight to voicemail, and my texts received only vague replies like, "So busy with Bradley's charity event planning. Talk soon." The final straw came a week later when we were planning our engagement party. Nathan had suggested a rooftop garden at one of San Francisco's historic hotels, elegant but not flashy, with stunning views of the bay. As we were finalizing the guest list, I reluctantly brought up Jessica. "We should probably invite her," I said. Not inviting her would just create more drama. It's your call, Nathan said. But I think you're right. Jessica not only RSVP'd immediately, but called to ask if she could bring Bradley and a few close friends to celebrate properly. Sensing trouble but wanting to keep the peace, I agreed to the additional guests. The day before the engagement party, I received a family-wide email from Jessica with the subject line concerned about Amelia. The message read, "Dear family, I've been hesitant to share this, but as Amelia's sister, I feel responsible for looking out for her best interests. I've had Nathan's family heirloom ring looked at by my friend Thomas, who owns Wilson Jewelers, no relation to Bradley. Based on the photos I provided, Thomas believes the emerald is most likely a treated stone worth a fraction of what a genuine cashmere emerald would be worth. I'm attaching his assessment and some educational links about gemstone fraud. I'm concerned that Nathan may not be forthcoming about his financial situation or his intentions. Please don't mention this to Amelia yet. I'll be addressing it with her privately after speaking with Bradley's lawyer friend about potential recourse. I just want to protect my sister from potential heartbreak or embarrassment. Love you all, Jessica." Attached was a brief statement on Wilson Jewelers' letterhead stating that based on digital photographs alone, the stone appeared to have characteristics of a treated beryl rather than a natural emerald of fine quality. I forwarded the email to Nathan without comment, my hands shaking with rage and humiliation. He called me immediately. "I just saw it," he said, his voice more serious than I'd ever heard it. "Amelia, this has gone beyond family drama. She's making false statements that could constitute defamation. What should we do?" I asked, fighting back tears. There was a brief silence before Nathan replied, "I think it's time to address this directly. Can you come to my office? I'd like you to meet with Caroline from my legal team." As I drove to Sentinel's headquarters, I wondered how our engagement, which should have been one of the happiest times in our lives, had become so overshadowed by my sister's jealousy and spite. Part of me still couldn't believe she would go this far just because she couldn't stand to see me happy. The engagement party was held at the Belvedere Gardens, a stunning rooftop venue with panoramic views of San Francisco Bay. Nathan had arranged for subtle but elegant decorations, white orchids, soft lighting, and comfortable seating areas where guests could mingle. A string quartet played quietly in one corner, and servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. As our friends and family began to arrive, I tried to focus on the joy of the occasion rather than my anxiety about Jessica's attendance. Nathan stayed close by my side, his calm presence keeping me grounded. "Remember what Caroline said," he murmured, squeezing my hand gently. "Don't engage unless necessary. Let them make the first move." Caroline Pierce, the head of Nathan's legal team, had spent 2 hours with us the previous day, outlining a strategy for handling Jessica's escalating behavior. The cool, composed attorney had laid out various scenarios and recommended responses, all while compiling a folder of Jessica's emails, texts, and social media posts. "Documentation is crucial," she had explained. "What your sister is doing could constitute defamation, especially since it's now affecting Nathan's business relationships." I nodded, scanning the growing crowd for any sign of Jessica. An hour into the party, just as I was beginning to hope she might not show up at all, I spotted her entering with Bradley. She was wearing a red dress that seemed deliberately chosen to stand out among the more subdued cocktail attire of the other guests. Around her neck gleamed a diamond pendant that caught the light with every movement. Bradley, beside her, looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting around as if assessing the wealth of everyone in the room. Behind them came 2 couples I didn't recognize, presumably the close friends Jessica had mentioned. I took a deep breath and moved to greet them, Nathan at my side. "Jessica, Bradley, welcome," I said, summoning a smile. "Thank you for coming." Jessica air-kissed my cheek. "Of course we came. I wouldn't miss my sister's engagement party." Her gaze swept over the venue. "It's cozy. Very understated." Bradley nodded stiffly. "Congratulations." Jessica introduced her friends, a jewelry designer named Melanie and her husband, and a couple who apparently worked in luxury real estate with Bradley. They offered polite congratulations before quickly heading toward the bar. "Let me see how that ring looks today," Jessica said, grabbing my hand without waiting for permission. She made a show of examining it under the light. "Still so unique. Don't you think it's unique, Bradley?" Bradley, who seemed increasingly uncomfortable, muttered something noncommittal. "You know," Jessica continued, her voice rising just enough to attract the attention of nearby guests, "I was telling Bradley that vintage jewelry can be so tricky. So many reproductions out there these days. I'm sure Nathan verified its authenticity though, right?" The moment had arrived sooner than I expected. I looked at Nathan, who gave me a subtle nod. "Actually, Jessica," I said, keeping my voice level, "I received your email yesterday. The one you sent to our entire family questioning the authenticity of my ring and Nathan's character." Jessica's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. "I was just concerned for you, Amelia." "As your sister, if you're concerned," Nathan interjected smoothly, "perhaps you'd like to meet some of our other guests." He gestured toward a small group of people standing nearby, 3 men and a woman in sharp business attire who had been quietly observing our interaction. "Jessica, this is Caroline Pierce, the head of my legal team. And these are her colleagues from Pierce, Goldstein, and Shaw." Caroline stepped forward, extending her hand with a professional smile. "Ms. Parker, we've heard so much about you. Your recent email to your family made for particularly interesting reading." Jessica's face paled slightly as she shook Caroline's hand. I'm not sure what you mean." "We'll be happy to clarify," Caroline said pleasantly. "We've been documenting your statements about Nathan and the ring he gave your sister. Statements that appear to be both false and potentially damaging to both his personal reputation and business interests." "Documenting?" Jessica repeated, her voice rising. "That's ridiculous. I was just looking out for my sister." "By distributing a fraudulent gemstone assessment based on photographs to her entire family?" Caroline asked, her tone still conversational though her eyes had hardened. "By suggesting to potential investors that Sentinel Security Systems is experiencing financial difficulties? Those actions go beyond sisterly concern, Miss Parker." Bradley, who had been listening with increasing alarm, took a step back. "Jessica, what is she talking about?" Jessica shot him a panicked look. "Nothing. They're exaggerating." Caroline opened a slim portfolio she'd been carrying. "We have prepared documentation for a potential defamation lawsuit, should your behavior continue. But first, perhaps you'd be interested in the actual provenance of Amelia's ring?" Without waiting for a response, she handed Jessica a document bearing the letterhead of Griffin and Sons, one of the world's most respected jewelry appraisers. "This is the most recent authentication and appraisal of the ring, completed last year for insurance purposes," Caroline explained. "As you can see, it confirms that the emerald is indeed a natural, untreated cashmere specimen of exceptional quality. The appraised value is noted on page 3. Jessica's hands trembled slightly as she turned to the 3rd page. Her eyes widened, and she quickly tried to hand the document back. "The ring is insured for $2.7 million, Caroline continued, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "It is considered museum quality due to both its gemological properties and its historical significance. The Austrian noble family that originally owned it has documented its provenance back to 1843. A small crowd had gathered around us now, including Jessica's friends and several of our family members. Jessica's face had gone from pale to bright red. "There must be some mistake," she stammered. "My friend Thomas said," Yes, Thomas Wilson," Caroline interrupted. "We spoke with him this morning. He was quite distressed to learn that you had distributed what appeared to be his professional assessment. He confirmed that he never physically examined the ring and explicitly told you that no reputable jeweler would authenticate a stone based solely on photographs. He has provided us with a signed statement to that effect." Bradley was now staring at Jessica with a mixture of embarrassment and anger. "You told me your jeweler friend had seen the ring in person. You said he was certain it was fake." I thought he meant." Jessica was floundering, looking desperately around the circle of observers. "Miss Parker," Caroline continued relentlessly, "we are prepared to pursue legal action for defamation, both on personal and business grounds. The estimated damages to Sentinel security systems alone, based on the investor who withdrew interest after hearing rumors from you, could exceed $5 million. $5 million. Bradley repeated, now taking another step away from Jessica. Jessica, what the hell did you do? Jessica turned to me, tears forming in her eyes. Amelia, this is ridiculous. I'm your sister. I was just concerned about you. I looked at her steadily. No, Jessica. You were trying to hurt me. You couldn't stand that I found someone who loves me for who I am rather than what I have. You couldn't bear that I got the kind of relationship you've always claimed to want. That's not true. I didn't think it made sense that a billionaire would give you such a small ring unless something was wrong. The only thing wrong, Nathan said quietly, was the assumption that worth is measured by ostentation rather than meaning. Jessica looked around at the circle of faces, some sympathetic, others disapproving, but all clearly aware of what she had done. Her friends were edging away, clearly not wanting to be associated with the scene. Bradley was already halfway across the room, deep in conversation with someone else. I need to go, Jessica whispered, tears now flowing freely. She turned and hurried toward the exit, fumbling with her purse, her carefully constructed image of sophistication completely shattered. As she disappeared through the door, Caroline closed her portfolio. Well, I think that went about as expected. Nathan turned to the gathered guests. Please, everyone, continue enjoying the party. The night is about celebrating love, not dwelling on misunderstandings. As the crowd dispersed, Nathan put his arm around me. Are you okay? I nodded, though I felt a complex mix of emotions: relief that Jessica's campaign had been stopped, sadness that my own sister had been willing to go so far to hurt me, and lingering anger at the weeks of stress she'd caused. I think I need a moment, I said. Nathan nodded understanding, and I made my way to a quiet corner of the rooftop garden. Looking out over the twinkling lights of San Francisco, I tried to process what had just happened. Jessica had always been competitive, but I'd never imagined she would risk legal consequences just to undermine my happiness. What kind of emptiness must she feel to go to such lengths? My thoughts were interrupted by my parents, who approached hesitantly. Amelia, my mother said, her eyes sad. We're so sorry. We had no idea Jessica was doing all this. We should have seen it, my father added. The signs have been there since you were children. Jessica always had to have what you had, be better than you at everything. It's not your fault, I assured them. But we never addressed it, my mother insisted. We thought it was normal sibling rivalry, but it was more than that. She's been competing with you her entire life, and we never helped her find her own path. We talked for a while longer, my parents sharing insights about Jessica's childhood behaviors that now seemed like clear warning signs, her distress when I received praise, her need to diminish my accomplishments, her increasing focus on material possessions as markers of success. Eventually, Nathan came to check on me, and together we rejoined the party. Despite the dramatic confrontation, the celebration continued successfully, with many guests later telling us it was one of the most memorable engagement parties they'd ever attended, though perhaps not for the reasons we'd originally intended. As the evening wound down, Caroline approached us one last time. I don't think she'll continue her campaign after tonight, but we'll monitor the situation. If you prefer to move forward with legal action regardless, we can discuss that next week. What do you think? Nathan asked me. I sighed. Let's wait and see. She's still my sister, despite everything. Caroline nodded. For what it's worth, I think that's the right call. Sometimes the possibility of consequences is enough to change behavior. As the last guests departed and we prepared to leave ourselves, I looked down at the ring on my finger, the ring that had become the unexpected catalyst for so much drama. In the soft evening light, the emerald seemed to glow with an inner fire, a reminder that true value isn't always visible on the surface. Jessica's hasty exit from our engagement party created the kind of spectacle she typically orchestrated for others, not herself. Bradley had not followed her out, instead remaining at the party for another hour, apologizing to Nathan and me before leaving with one of Jessica's friends, the jewelry designer Melanie. The days following the party were strangely quiet. Jessica, usually hyperactive on social media, posted nothing. Her Instagram, typically updated multiple times daily with glamorous photos and location tags at exclusive venues, remained frozen on a post from the morning of our engagement party. A close-up of her manicure with my parents' house barely visible in the background. "Do you think she's okay?" I asked Nathan the third day after the confrontation. Despite everything, I couldn't help worrying about my sister. "I expect she's taking some time to reflect," he said. Caroline can be quite persuasive about the seriousness of potential legal consequences. Later that day, my mother called. "Have you heard from Jessica?" she asked without preamble. "No, not since she left the party." "Why?" "She's not answering our calls either. I drove by her apartment yesterday, but her car wasn't there." The hint of worry in my mother's voice triggered my own concern. For all her flaws, Jessica was still family. "I'll try reaching out to her," I promised. My text to Jessica was simple: "Just checking that you're okay. Let me know if you want to talk." Hours passed with no response. I was about to call Bradley, despite my reluctance to speak with him, when my phone finally chimed with a message from Jessica. "I'm fine. Staying at a hotel for a few days. Need space." At least she was safe. I relayed the information to my parents, who seemed relieved if still concerned. A week after the party, Nathan received an unexpected update from Caroline. "Bradley Wilson called the office this morning," she informed us over speakerphone. "He wanted to make it clear that he had no knowledge of Jessica's actions regarding the ring or the company rumors, and that they are no longer seeing each other." "He broke up with her?" I asked, surprised despite myself. Jessica was usually the one who ended relationships, typically when she spotted a more advantageous prospect. According to him, yes. He seemed quite concerned about potential association with the situation. The knowledge that Jessica had lost the relationship she'd been so eager to flaunt should have felt like poetic justice, but instead, it just added to my complicated feelings about the whole situation. I couldn't imagine she was taking it well. 2 days later, I received a text from a mutual friend. "FYI, ran into Jessica at Westfield Mall. She looked rough. Said something about her perfect life falling apart because of family betrayal. Thought you should know." I showed the message to Nathan. "This is getting ridiculous. I didn't betray her. She attacked us and got caught." "True," he agreed. "But people often rewrite narratives to protect themselves from guilt. Jessica needs to see herself as the victim here, not the aggressor." Nathan's insight made sense, but it didn't lessen my frustration. The next family Sunday dinner was approaching, and my mother had already called twice asking if I thought Jessica would attend and whether it would be terribly awkward if she did. "You should go without me," Nathan suggested when I shared my mother's concerns. "It might be easier for Jessica to show up if she doesn't have to face both of us." "You shouldn't have to miss family dinner because of her behavior," I protested. "I don't mind. I have some foundation work to catch up on anyway. Family healing is more important right now." So I attended dinner alone, only to find that Jessica didn't show up after all. My parents were visibly disappointed, though they tried to hide it. Throughout the meal, they carefully avoided mentioning Jessica or the engagement party confrontation, creating awkward pauses in the conversation whenever we approached adjacent topics. As I was helping clear the table, my father finally broke the silence. "Your mother and I have been talking," he said hesitantly. "About Jessica and you." I braced myself. "What about us?" "We've been looking back, trying to understand how things got to this point." He set down the plates he was carrying and rubbed his forehead. "I think we may have unintentionally contributed to Jessica's competitiveness with you." My mother joined us, nodding in agreement. "You were always so self-sufficient, Amelia. You did well in school without our pushing, you got scholarships, you built your career through hard work. We were so proud, but maybe we praised you in ways that made Jessica feel she couldn't measure up," my father finished. "And instead of helping her find her own path, we just kept holding you up as the example." I leaned against the counter, considering their words. There was some truth to them. Jessica had grown up hearing, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" more times than I could count. That might be part of it, I acknowledged. But we're adults now. She's responsible for her own actions. Of course, my mother said quickly. What she did was wrong. But understanding why might help us move forward. By the time I left my parents' house that evening, we had talked more openly about Jessica than we ever had before. They shared stories of her childhood insecurities, her early patterns of trying to one-up me, and their own uncertainty about how to handle it. I left with a more nuanced understanding of my sister, though it didn't excuse her recent behavior. 3 weeks after the engagement party, I was immersed in wedding planning when I received a text that stopped me in my tracks. It was from Jessica. Can we talk? In person? Neutral location? I stared at the message for several minutes before showing it to Nathan. It's your call, he said. But if you do meet her, choose somewhere public. After careful consideration, I suggested a coffee shop halfway between our apartments. Jessica agreed immediately. When I arrived the next day, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the carefully curated appearance of effortless luxury. Instead, Jessica wore simple jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, minimal makeup on her face. She looked younger, more vulnerable, and strangely more like the sister I remembered from our teenage years. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat across from her, her usual confidence notably absent. You wanted to talk, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Jessica stared into her coffee cup. I've been doing a lot of thinking. And talking to someone. Talking to someone? A therapist, she admitted, not meeting my eyes. Mom and Dad have been paying for it. After Bradley broke up with me and I lost the apartment we were going to move into together, everything kind of fell apart. I hadn't known about the apartment. I'm sorry about Bradley, I offered, surprised to find I meant it. Don't be. Turns out he was using me to network with my friend's wealthy parents. When the whole scene at your engagement party made me look bad, I wasn't useful to him anymore. She laughed bitterly. Ironic, right? I accused Nathan of not being what he seemed, when Bradley was the fake all along. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I waited. My therapist thinks I have some comparative identity issues or something like that, Jessica continued. She says I've been defining myself in relation to you my whole life. That I never developed a secure sense of self. It aligned with what my parents had said, but hearing it from Jessica was unexpected. The thing is, she went on, seeing you with Nathan, it was like every insecurity I've ever had got triggered at once. You found this genuinely good guy who loves you for your brain and your heart, not what you look like or what you can do for him. And he happens to be wealthy on top of it all. It felt like you'd won some cosmic lottery that I'd been desperately trying to rig in my favor for years. It wasn't a competition, Jess, I said softly. I know that. Now. She finally looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed. I'm not asking you to forgive me. What I did was terrible. I was jealous and petty and cruel. I'm just hoping that maybe someday we could try to have a different kind of relationship. One where I'm not constantly trying to one-up you or tear you down. It wasn't a perfect apology. She hadn't explicitly said, I'm sorry, or fully acknowledged the extent of the harm she'd caused. But it was more self-awareness than I'd ever seen from my sister, and that counted for something. It would take time, I said honestly. And trust needs to be rebuilt. Jessica nodded quickly. I know. I'm not expecting anything overnight. I just didn't want to lose my sister completely. We talked for another hour, Jessica more open than she'd been in years. She shared how her carefully constructed facade of success had been largely illusory. The designer clothes bought on credit cards, the access to exclusive events gained through questionable friendships, the constant anxiety of maintaining appearances. She was drowning in debt and had been counting on marriage to Bradley to solve her financial problems. I'm moving back home with Mom and Dad for a while, she admitted. I need to get my finances in order. Maybe finish my degree finally. When we parted, we didn't hug, but there was a tentative warmth between us that had been absent for years. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet, but it was a beginning. Over the following months, as Nathan and I planned our wedding, Jessica maintained a respectful distance while making small efforts to rebuild trust. She sent a handwritten apology note to Nathan. She attended family dinners without making scenes. She even offered to help with wedding preparations in modest ways that didn't put her at the center of attention. Do you think she's really changed? Nathan asked after Jessica had dropped off some wedding magazine clippings that actually aligned with our taste. I think she's trying, I replied. And that's something I wouldn't have believed possible a few months ago. 6 months after the confrontation at our engagement party, I stood in a dressing room at the historic Fairmont Hotel, where our wedding would take place in just 2 hours. My mother was adjusting my veil while my friend Megan made last-minute touches to my makeup. The florist just finished setting up, Megan reported, checking her phone. Everything looks gorgeous. There was a soft knock at the door, and Jessica's voice called, "Can I come in?" My mother glanced at me questioningly. Jessica had been invited to be a bridesmaid, a decision I'd made after months of her consistent efforts to rebuild our relationship, but I'd half expected her to find some way to draw attention to herself today. "Come in," I called. Jessica entered, already dressed in the sage green bridesmaid dress we'd selected. Her hair and makeup were exactly as we'd planned with the stylists, elegant but not overshadowing the bride. Most surprisingly, she wore minimal jewelry. Small pearl earrings and a simple bracelet. "Wow," she said softly, seeing me in my dress for the first time. "Amelia, you look absolutely beautiful." The sincerity in her voice brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thank you. Can I have a moment alone with Amelia?" Jessica asked my mother and Megan, who exchanged glances before nodding and stepping out. When the door closed, Jessica took a deep breath. "I wanted to give you something. It's not much, but..." She handed me a small wrapped package. Inside was a delicate embroidered handkerchief with my new initials in blue thread. "Something blue for the wedding," Jessica explained. "I made it myself. I've been taking a needlework class as part of my therapy, something about mindfulness and creating rather than acquiring." I ran my fingers over the neat stitches, touched by the personal effort. "You made this?" Jessica nodded, looking both proud and embarrassed. "It's my first completed project." The teacher said I have a natural eye for detail. "It's beautiful, Jess." "Thank you." She hesitated, then added, "I also wanted to say something about your ring." My hand instinctively went to the emerald on my finger, still a source of occasional anxiety when Jessica was around. "I was wrong about it," she said simply. "Not just factually wrong about its value, but wrong about what makes something valuable." I was so caught up in appearances that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. "Your ring is beautiful because of what it represents, a love that's survived hardship and remained true. That's worth more than any diamond Bradley could have bought to show off his status." I couldn't speak for a moment, overwhelmed by this unexpected validation from the person whose criticism had once hurt so deeply. "Thank you for saying that," I managed finally. "It means a lot coming from you." Jessica smiled, a genuine smile without the competitive edge I'd grown used to seeing. "Nathan's a good man. I'm happy for you both. Really." As she turned to leave, I called, "Jess? I'm proud of the work you're doing. On yourself, I mean." Her eyes brightened with unshed tears. "Thanks. It's harder than I expected, but better too." The wedding ceremony was everything Nathan and I had hoped for: intimate, meaningful, and focused on our commitment rather than spectacle. Nathan's grandparents' wedding bands had been resized for us, complementing my emerald engagement ring with their own history of enduring love. During the reception, I noticed Jessica chatting comfortably with Caroline Pierce, the attorney who had once presented her with potential legal consequences. They appeared to be having a genuinely pleasant conversation, with no sign of the tension that had characterized their first meeting. "What do you think they're talking about?" I asked Nathan as we shared our first dance. He glanced over my shoulder and smiled. "Based on Caroline's gestures, I'd say law school." "Your sister mentioned she's considering it, didn't she?" Indeed, Jessica had recently begun exploring the possibility of finishing her undergraduate degree and applying to law school, a direction none of us had anticipated, but that seemed to energize her in a way her previous pursuits never had. From spreading rumors to studying defamation law, I mused. That would be quite a transformation. "People can surprise you," Nathan said, pulling me closer, "when they finally find their authentic path instead of chasing someone else's." Later that evening, As the celebration continued around us, Nathan and I took a moment alone on the hotel's terrace, overlooking the city lights. "How does it feel to be Mrs. Amelia Winters?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Exactly the same as it felt to be MS. Amelia Parker," I replied honestly. "That's how I know we're doing this right. I'm not becoming someone new. We're building something new together." Nathan kissed my temple. "That's what I hoped you'd say." I looked down at my ring, the emerald catching the moonlight. This past year has been such a journey. When Jessica first started criticizing the ring, I never imagined it would lead to her complete meltdown, legal threats, and then growth, I guess. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they can rebuild on a stronger foundation, Nathan observed. The question is whether they use that moment as an opportunity or just another excuse. "I'm glad she chose opportunity," I said. "As painful as it all was, I think we're all better for having gone through it. I've learned to stand firm in what I value rather than letting others' opinions shake me. My parents have confronted their role in our family dynamics. And Jessica? Well, she's finally starting to find her own identity instead of defining herself in opposition to me." "And what about us?" Nathan asked. "What have we learned?" I turned in his arms to face him. That true partnership means standing together through challenges, whether they come from outside or within your own family. That wealth isn't about what you have, but about how you use what you have. And that sometimes the most valuable things don't shine the brightest at first glance. The emerald on my finger, once the catalyst for so much conflict, now seemed to embody all the lessons we'd learned. Like Nathan's grandmother who had carried it through war and hardship, we had emerged from our own trials stronger and more certain of our path forward. As we rejoined our wedding celebration, I reflected on how differently things might have turned out if Jessica's jealousy had remained unchecked, if Nathan had been a different kind of man, if I had allowed others' values to override my own. The journey had been painful at times, but the destination, this moment of authentic joy and connection, was worth every difficult step. In the end, what my sister had intended as an attack on my happiness had instead become a catalyst for growth. For her, for me, for our entire family. The very ring she had mocked as fake had proven to be not only genuinely valuable, but also a powerful symbol of resilience and enduring love. And in confronting her jealousy and finding her own path forward, Jessica had finally discovered something more precious than any jewel, the beginning of her authentic self. What about you? Have you ever had a family member try to undermine your happiness or judge something important to you based on their own values rather than yours? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed hearing about how my Billionaire Fiancé's legal team helped put an end to my sister's jealous campaign, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share with anyone who might need a reminder that sometimes standing up for yourself is the kindest thing you can do, both for yourself and for those who need to learn important life lessons. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, true value isn't always visible at first glance.